We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. We made it. We made it this week. Here we are. We're doing an episode.
You know, it's like my brain doesn't always work. So last week we had a new AC installed because our old AC was like 15 years old, and we were spending a minimum of $350 to $500 a year just keeping it maintained. You know, things were blowing on it and stuff like that. So we got a new one. It's supposed to save us a whole bunch of money as far as per month, and most importantly, it's got 10 years parts warranty and 1 year labor warranty on it. And the guy who installed it is it's a good guy. I know him.
Okay.
So I'm all excited about it, and then they're like, "Oh, we got to come by next week to have the city inspector inspect it to make sure it's all good." I'm like, okay. That's fine.
Pretty standard.
And he goes, when can I come? I'm like, anytime, it doesn't matter. So when does he show up?
Podcast time.
9:30 a.m. on Tuesday. I'm like, oh, no. He goes, don't worry, the city inspector's not going to be here till between 10 and 12. I'm like, that is literally exactly the one window that I should have said, don't schedule it then.
Don't worry, it's worse.
We're here.
We made it.
Yeah, we made it. And not only that, so the Rotary Club, which those of you who know what that is, I think everybody in America should know what the Rotary Club is, but it's sort of a service organization, volunteer service organization that does, lots of stuff. They give scholarship to kids. They, that's what I know about them. They do scholarship for kids and stuff. But,
all right.
They're sort of an organization that you can join, and it helps you. You get to help the community and other things. Anyways, one of the things they do is they have a foreign exchange student program where they get people here from other countries and then place them in people's houses and that sort of thing.
Right.
But they have a weird system, which I mean, maybe it's not weird because they're the Rotary Club and it rotates, but they have the kids switch houses like about three times over the course of the school year. So every 3 months or so, they're supposed to switch to a new house. But for whatever reason, they didn't have this thing all set up for this one foreign exchange student who stayed at the beginning of the year with my brother-in-law. Mm-hmm. So we met her, and she, actually climbed with her a couple of times. Nice girl, about the age of my son. So I think she's 15 years old. And we said, hey, if I don't know where you guys are going to put her next, but we would be happy to take her. And we never heard anything from them. And then last week on Monday, they contacted us and said, "Yeah, did you guys finish filling up all that paperwork?" I'm like, "Oh, I thought I did." And they're like, "Well, we don't have this from your wife." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So my wife filled it out. Wednesday, they're like, "Yeah, so we got all your paperwork, and she needs a place to go, so she's going to be there Saturday."
Right.
I'm like, but we're not ready for a foreign exchange student to come here on Saturday. So she's here. And that's my life has been completely upended as I'm trying to sort this. Yeah, I've got nothing but boys. Let's sort this teenage girl into our lives and figure out her schedule and how she's going to get to and from school and everything else. So it's been a little crazy.
Yup.
If I haven't been answering your emails, I'm sorry. This is why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's other things to talk about too. I'll be doing I can't. The email won't open, but Audio Technica's got some wireless noise canceling headphones that they're coming out with. I said I'd review them for the podcast, and he's been saying which ones do you want? I'm like, does I don't freaking care count as a response? Because send me whatever ones you want. I don't care. You tell me. So they're supposed to be sending me something out, so I'll be doing that. And SVS heard about me not wanting to have floor standing speakers in here anymore, so they are going to replace every speaker that's not an SVS speaker with an SVS speaker that's in my home theater.
I'm sure they want you to take photos so they can feature it. That must be the idea, so they can be like, "Hey, it's an entirely SVS system."
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But the thing is they're like, "Well, Tom, I don't really think that we can do ultras up front and prime speakers in the surrounds and surrounds back. Would you be okay with satellites, the prime satellites?" I'm like, "Will that be okay?" Okay, I sit 3 feet away from the frickin' speakers. I don't care what they are. I mean, listen. I mean, you guys could give me a speaker, I would put it in here. It doesn't matter. I'm not trying to, leverage my reputation with SVS to get a whole new speaker system. I'm like, you guys reached out to me. I didn't reach out to you and say, give me speakers. Put prime all the way around. So, anyways, I'm going to have an old SVS speaker system.
Cool. It is tough when it's 9 additional speakers. You already had 2 prime elevations, but it's 9 other speakers. It's a lot.
Yes.
It's a lot of speakers.
It's a lot. It's a lot of speakers, but it's actually going to make it a lot easier for me to place these things exactly where I want to place them. I'll be able to put the elevations on the roof, which is something we haven't done before in this podcast. So we'll see how that works out. All right, let's get to the podcast. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Apparently, I have a frog in my throat. You can go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast is probably, if you don't want to email us, that's the best way to get in touch with us. YouTube.com/AVRant to see our videos. You can contact Rob directly at rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is at @FirstReflect.
Yes.
Mine is Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom, which is utilized almost never. So we want to thank our listeners of the week, as we always do. These are people that have supported the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and that will send you to a PayPal donation site. So we want to thank Jacob for doing that. Thank you very much, Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob, thank you for that PayPal donation. We appreciate it.
I want to thank our 106 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a server where you can sign up for a monthly subscription to any content creator that you want. And if you choose us, then once a month, they will take some money from you, the amount that you dictate, and they will give most of it to us. So thank you to our 106 patrons.
Oh, yeah. That's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. If you'd like to sign up, it's a voluntary subscription. Think of it that way. 106 patrons over there. So thank you so much for the support.
Yeah, rather than having a 2-week-long NPR, membership drive, we do a little bit at the beginning of every podcast. If you can't support the podcast or don't want to financially, I totally understand. But if you do something that will support us, just let us know what you did. So many people, including Infinite Gary, Nathan, Andy, Carl, wrote us to let us know that SVS prominently featured our interview with Gary Yakubian and Nick Brown in their recent newsletter. We were in the title.
Yes.
It was nice.
We were part of the headline, so I consider that prominent.
That's
I guess our actual listener of the week there is SVS. But
yeah, I guess
thank you for all the people who noticed and were excited about it. That's nice.
Great. Infinite Gary bought a 1x2 HDMI splitter from Seoul and let them know that it was because of us. And Lee Overstreet bought himself a Yamaha RX A1070 from Accessories for Less and talked up AVRant to them as well. So thank you, Gary. Thank you, Lee. And thank you, SVS.
That's right. Gary, Lee, thank you for talking us up to those retailers. We appreciate it.
And just a reminder, we have our upcoming interview with Alan Hutchinson from HTmarket.com. Rob will be conducting that interview since I will be out of town. I'm going to be leaving at 6:30 or 7 a.m. to get on the flight to go to Portland, Oregon. I'll be gone for 3 or 4 days. So I unfortunately will have to miss that interview, but I'm sure it'll be fantastic.
Yeah, February 19th, we're mostly going to talk about their HT Design home theater seating, but it is HT Market. They sell all kinds of things. I haven't had any questions come in just yet, so I hope people aren't waiting till the last minute, because unfortunately when we announce it ahead of time, sometimes people are like, I got lots of time to send in a question. No, we would rather be able to prepare and allow Alan to see the questions ahead of time. So please, if you have any questions for Alan, the owner of HT Market, and especially if it's about the HT Design seating, send them on in so that we can put it on the list.
All right, so I don't know if what their offerings are because I haven't looked at them recently, but every time I try to buy a couch, that it's a couch, right?
Yeah.
That has the powered reclining seats and all that stuff.
Sure.
The middle seat never can be powered. It has to be manual.
That's typical.
I want to know why they can't do that and when are they going to start?
Well,
it seems like
HT Design can, because you're just buying individual seats.
But they always have to have an arm.
Well, no, you can get one armless. And then it has a wand that has the controls on it instead.
All right. Well, there we go.
There you go.
My question is answered already.
Send those questions, by the way, to question@avrant.com. Had a couple more people ask, how do I send a question to the podcast? I'm like, I don't know how you've missed it, but it's question@avrant.com. That is our email address. And send your questions about HTMarket there as well, please.
How did they hear about your email address, but not question@avrant.com?
I don't know.
I don't know either. All right, in the news, Chris says MoviePass is truly dead. They have now filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which means they are dissolving the company entirely, and all board members have resigned. What that was a fantastic idea that the movie theater said, why would we let you do this when we could do it ourselves? And that was the end of that.
It was never really a viable business. I mean, clearly their entire profit structure was to sell everybody's information, which is what they did without telling anybody. They also re-signed up people who had canceled without telling them they were going to do it. I mean, MoviePass was a horrible company. So I'm not sad that that is gone. However, I will give credit to the fact that because they existed, something like Stubbs was it A-List? Stubbs A-List, over there at AMC, like that exists now. And it very well might not have ever come into being without MoviePass having been around.
I 100% agree.
There you go.
Excuse me.
We'll take that good part of it and bid them adieu.
Yeah. Sandy Gross has sold yet another speaker brand. Who?
Sandy Gross. He was the co-faunder of Polk and Definitive Technology and Golden Ear.
All right. After previously selling Polk and Def Tech to Sound United, Golden Ear Technology has now been sold to the Quest Group, which also runs Audio Quest and Niagara Power products. I've never heard of Niagara, but I know Audio Quest is who they are. Dog.
Yeah.
Lie down.
So given Golden Ear now being owned by Audio Quest and run by those folks, I don't necessarily expect the products to change very much. In fact, they likely won't change at all for many, many years at this point. However, expect the marketing to get much more flowery language and awful.
I was going to say wordy. Full of things like the quantum.
Because really that's what Audio Quest does. Audio Quest is a marketing company more than anything because the products they sell are nothing special. But they like to charge
now
they've got them.
Now they've got something a little bit special that they can sell and mark up 300%. So
that's right.
Get your Golden Ear now before they get expensive.
Yeah.
Some comments from listeners here. Andrew and Carl on Twitter heard Rob's description last week about having your overhead speakers at 45-degree angles, elevation angles in front of you and behind you, but then label them as front and rear heights instead of top fronts and top rears for the best experience from all three immersive audio formats. Carl wanted to know where he could read more about that, so we can point everyone to the Monoprice Monolith HTP1 manual, where it's described on page 25. So knock yourselves out there. And Andrew decided to give it a try, and so far it does seem to be delivering purely discrete sounds from both Atmos and DTS-X, so he thinks it's an amazing tip. So good job, Rob.
Well,
I was actually just thinking about
delivering the message.
Now that I have the option of moving speakers around, I might try that, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't want to have any more speakers on my wires on my ceiling. All right, let's get to the questions here. Damien. Back to Damien's basement theater once again. So yeah, this is the one with the door in the front left where he can't really place his speaker anywhere, and he's got a drop ceiling, it looks like.
Yep.
And he's going to go with a bigger screen. Is that the deal?
That's right, yeah. This is the screen he got for free, so why not use it for now? But eventually he'll be getting a fixed frame silver ticket screen. That's the plan.
Yeah. So, but he's got a door in like the front left corner with like maybe, it looks like maybe 6 inches to a foot of space between the front wall and the door there, so you can't really put a speaker up there, and it's making it really hard for him to put speakers. If he puts it in front of the door, it's actually directly to the left of the couch, which is untenable. So with lots of space at the back and it being a T shape with a hallway on the right, Damien calculated that he's got about 4,000 cubic feet of air plus whatever might be going through the drop tile ceiling. At the moment, he's using a pair of SVS SB12 NSD subs, and he runs them a little hot at plus 3 dB. He tried listening at full reference volume, which he doesn't do a lot, but wanted to give it a try, and that managed to get the limiter light to flash a few times on the subs. He doesn't want to blow his subs, so is it time to start planning for a subwoofer upgrade? Well, you say you don't listen to it that often, and it's this is the only time you've ever seen that, so I mean, yes is the answer, but I would say it was the last thing I would upgrade in this home theater, because it's not something that you're going to run into all that often.
Yeah, I mean, we do have to say, like, the SB12 NSD, objectively, if you've got 4,000 cubic feet, they are not sufficient to deliver full reference volume at 20 hertz in that volume of air. That's just a fact. And if that is what you truly want to be able to do, then there is no alternative to either add and stack more of the subs you have. Well, you can't really get SB12 NSDs anymore, but you'd have to add and stack or replace them with higher output models to hit full reference volume in 4,000 cubic feet at 20 hertz.
Yeah. For those of you that, going 12 NSDs, what the heck is that? It's equivalent to the 2000 series.
It's equivalent to a sealed box 2000, but although it's not as high output as the new 2000 Pro. The 2000 Pros can play louder than the SB12 NSDs could, but it is the sealed box akin to the 2000 series. Yeah, so I agree with Tom. I mean, given that that is not how you normally listen, you don't have to worry that you're going to blow out an SVS subwoofer. It is not going to break itself. That's the limiter is there to limit it from damaging itself. It's safe. You don't have to worry.
I love it when they label things what they actually do.
Yes, that's right.
Nice.
So continue to use it. Don't worry too much. You've got other things that I know you need to spend your money on first to upgrade in this theater. But eventually one day, if that's what you want to be able to do, then it'll be a subwoofer upgrade time.
So he says when it comes to very high output for the lowest price, there's more than just SVS out there, right? So where should he be looking if he wants, say, a PB 3000 level output, but for the lowest price? So we're going to come up, and I don't know any of the model numbers, of course, but we're going to come up against the same culprits that we always do. Power Sound Audio is going to come first to my mind, because that's what they do. They make subs that put out a lot of output. HSU, of course, is probably going to have something there. And then I guess Rhythmic is the other one that comes to my mind.
Sure. If you're going lowest price, it'll actually be HSU right now. It'll be Shu Research these days. Their VTF-15H, once you include the shipping, goes for about $1,000 each. And that is the 15-inch model, but it's not dissimilar at all from SVS's PB3000, which is now a 13.5-inch driver. So that is the lowest price for that level of output, VTF-15H from Shu. Power Sound Audio, they have changed their models again, and their prices went up a little bit. So now their 15-inch ported model, their entry-level one, is $1,150. That includes shipping. So a little bit more expensive than Shu at this point, but still a great choice and still less expensive than the PB3000, which goes for $1,400. So very close to those prices. Mono prices, Monolith 15 is sort of in that output range. It almost splits the difference between the 3,000 and 4,000.
I got to get Mono price to start popping into my head when we start talking about these things. The Monolith series just has not seeped into my brain hole.
Yeah, because the Monolith 12 would not have the same output as a 3000, but the Monolith 15 is like a little more than a 3000, but not quite as much as a 4000. It's like splits the difference, but it goes for $1,350, so it's right there at about the same price. Rhythmic's FV15HP, which again is very close to a 4,000 more than a 3,000, but it's $1,400, which is the same as a PB3000. So the value choices here are Power Sound Audio or Shu.
There you go. So he really wants black ceiling tiles instead of white, but he's got a lot of drop tile ceiling tiles to replace, and proper acoustic ceiling tiles in black are looking cost prohibitive. So is there any way to do something about something above the ceiling tiles and then use cheaper tiles and end up with results similar to what a proper acoustic ceiling tiles would give him? It's called speaker grill cloth, and you just do that across the entire ceiling. Just cover your ceiling with it. Yeah. I mean, I don't think so what he's talking about is replacing his ceiling tiles. And if we look at if we look at the ceiling he's got right now, the frame for the ceiling tiles is all white.
Yes. And it's all 2x2.
And if you replaced your ceiling tiles, you would have with black ceiling tiles of any kind. They would be black ceiling tiles all outlined in white.
True.
Which would be a checkerboard sort of weird pattern. And to me, I'm like, ooh. I would rather just take and string up that acoustically transparent black fabric across the entire ceiling. Right under the ceiling tiles. I mean, you could really get black thumbtacks and just tack it to the ceiling tiles themselves, and then just make sure it's nice and taut, and then do that all the way across, and then your entire ceiling is now black, and the solution to turning it back white is just taking down all the tacks and pulling this thing down. If you buy entirely black ceiling tiles, I think you need to replace the frame as well, or paint it.
Yeah, there's that aspect of it. Yeah, the other side of it is if you get, your cheap ceiling tiles that you could grab at Home Depot or something like that, they're very, very thin. They don't support any weight. So putting something above them, whatever goes above them pretty much needs to be its own weight support. And to get something akin to, so there's your standard sort of like office acoustic ceiling tiles, which are really just 1 to 2 inches thick of basically like foam and sometimes cork board, that type of thing. They don't really block a whole lot of song. If you go over to something like Acoustical Solutions, their acoustic ceiling tiles, you can get that style, but you can also get the type that actually have like a weighted membrane above them so that they actually deliver some soundproofing as well. And that is sort of what Damien was looking at, which does increase the cost quite a bit. To equal something like the sound blocking membrane, you'd have to put basically mass-loaded vinyl above your existing ceiling tiles, but you'd have, support the tiles themselves would support no weight if you get cheap ceiling tiles, so you'd have to find some way of distributing the weight of the mass-loaded vinyl. And then on the acoustic absorption side, that's really tough because even the cheap tiles, if they're solid, they're going to reflect more sound than they absorb. It's not as though the sound is somehow going to get through them just because they're thin. Sound waves don't like to transition mediums. Most of that energy, even if it's going from water to air, the air doesn't have all this like solid mass to it, but it still reflects the sound waves back down because they just don't like to transition mediums. So that isn't a great solution in my mind, acoustically speaking, to just do cheap tiles. And then like if you put mass-loaded vinyl, a whole bunch of insulation above them, that's going to cost you as much as getting the expensive tiles anyway. So I don't like that as a great solution. What works better is if your current ceiling tiles are not acoustic ceiling tiles, get like cheap ones that are ugly that you don't care about and then cover them in fabric, exactly like Tom says. That is the better solution than going with just cheap, thin tiles.
So he isn't super keen on becoming an RBH dealer. It's really less work than you think it is, but let's go on. Because he went RBH speakers, and
but there's no dealer in his area.
There's no dealer in his area, and I suggested he could become a dealer. So the Aperion in-ceiling speakers we mentioned are an option, but he also heard Rob recommend the monoprice Sycamore in-ceiling speakers, which cost less. Would they be a good match for his Ascend SE speakers? This is for Atmos?
This is for Atmos. Yeah.
Put whatever the heck you want.
I would be pretty much entirely fine with them. If you were using those drivers to make front speakers, no, they don't match your Ascend SEs. But as Atmos speakers, I'd be probably entirely fine with those. He was asking for like what matches the best. I'm like RBH or Aperion, but for Atmos, I barely care. So I'd be totally fine using the monoprice Sycamores for your Atmos.
It's just Atmos uses so little of the frequency response range that it's like, does it have a tweeter? Then it's okay. A tweeter in the world's smallest mid-range? Thumbs up. So when he was experimenting with having his front left and right speakers in front of his door, that basically put them where his front wides would go. His front wides would go, right? He kind of liked certain aspects of that super wide soundstage. Should he consider front wides? No.
The budget, dude.
Not unless you're planning on buying. It's not unless you're planning on buying the highest model Denon receiver for thousands of dollars now.
That's right. You're going X8500H if you're in the Denon lineup, or I guess you could get a monoprice monolith HTP1, which by itself is $4,000, and then you would need. Well, let's see if he's doing wides plus 7 regular speakers plus 4 overheads. Well, you'd only need 13 external channels of amplification because the HTP1 is a pre-pro. It has no amplifiers built into it. You're talking to the guy who's a fan of front wides, but that makes no financial sense in your current situation. Maybe one day, way in the future.
So he's using side clamping wall mounts for his HTM 200 SE speakers. He'd appreciate something closer to a flush wall mount. Any suggestions? So it's been over a week since Damien asked this. So in the meantime, he discovered that he can reverse the bottom of his side clamping mount, which has allowed him to position his speakers closer to the wall. So now he's using. So instead of clamping it on the back He's clamping it on the bottom, so that puts it closer to the wall. So he's
actually, like these were the ones where it has like a base that's holding the speaker, and then the side clamps are there. And normally the side clamps are close to the front of the speaker. But he's like literally turned that base around, so now the clamps are at the back of the speaker, like on the bottom, but at the back.
Yeah.
So the clamps are always going to be on the bottom of the speaker, but normally they're towards the front. Yeah, I don't know how super stable that is. I mean, you're relying on
This looks like it's going to go tumbling out of this thing, to be
looks
honest
like
with
you
me,
are
but,
relying on that clamp. No, those clamps do allow you to actually just put a little wood screw in, and the HTM 200 SE speakers that he's using are just an MDF cabinet, and Dave has said many times it's totally fine. Like, not a deep wood screw, just enough to get into the side of it, and yes, it will, of course, mark up the finish on the outside, but for the purposes of safety,
There's not a keyhole mount in the back of this speaker?
It's not a keyhole, no, it's a threaded insert. In fact, it's a dual threaded insert like two. So I was going to mention that the ones I normally recommend for this over at Pinpoint Mounts, they have a nice, essentially flush mount speaker bracket that you can get. They're $60, which is a little bit expensive for what they are because it's just a piece of metal with two-sided that you hook together. But it does allow you to essentially flush mount a speaker that has the type of mounts that the HTM 200 SE does, the dual threaded inserts on the back. So that is still an option, but yeah, as long as your side clamping mount is secure, and like I say, a little wood screw just to make sure that it's actually fully secured there is okay. It'll leave a little hole in the outside finish.
Okay. So he started getting into Room EQ Wizard using a U-Mic 1. I hope it's from Cross Spectrum Labs, because if not,
$5 extra.
On $5 extra. What do you get? Fully professionally reference calibration.
I mean, the U-Mic 1 by itself is already really close, so it's not the end of the world.
But for $5, you can have this thing be professionally calibrated so that it is as close to a reference level microphone as you can get. That's not worth $5 when you're spending what, $100 on a mic or whatever it is. Come on, don't be cheap. Go the extra mile. Anyways, when he runs his bass sweeps with the receiver's master volume at full reference, the sweeps are crazy loud, as one would expect, and the microphone itself clips. What is he doing wrong? I don't actually know, but are you turning off Odyssey and all the other things before you do this and setting the trim levels to 0 on your sub?
Well, it's not necessarily that, because you might want to measure what your Odyssey response is. I suspect that in Room EQ Wizard itself, you might have set its output level to 0 dB, and you don't want to do that. Within Room EQ Wizard, 0 dB is not referencing reference volume. 0 dB in Room EQ Wizard is referencing decibels full scale. And if you're using the 16-bit output, full scale is a little bit over 96 decibels. So that could explain things, because that is far, far, far too loud. You don't want 96 decibels plus coming out as your sweep. Right. So I think that's likely what happened. Now, normally what people do with Room EQ Wizard is put it out at negative 12 dB full scale. That's almost the standard, because that would give you 85 decibels, which is what we consider full reference volume, right? Full reference volume, your average output level is 85 decibels. So negative 12 dB FS as your output in Room EQ Wizard will give you 85 decibels. However, if you're trying to get the same sort of output level sweeps and pink noise and that you would get from the AV receiver itself, you actually want to put it at negative 22 decibels full scale to get you down to 75. Right? But negative 12 dB FS should be fine. That shouldn't clip your microphone or anything like that. But 0 dB full scale, your 96 decibels plus is way too loud.
Mike is running a 5.1 speaker setup using Marantz SR5011 Paradigm Prestige speakers and SVS SB3000. His TV is 65-inch Sony X950G, and if he's going to make any additional purchases, he wants to be future-proof for the next 5 to 10 years. Dude, we are not magicians. We can guarantee you that if you buy a sub or a amplifier right now, then 5 to 10 years from now, it will be just as relevant as it is today. Everything else, we can make no promises.
Speakers are pretty darn safe.
Speakers and speaker wire would be
those
okay.
Paradigm Prestige speakers, 10 years, those still going to be great speakers.
They're going to be fine, yeah. So is an AV receiver upgrade in order? He was thinking maybe the Marantz SR6014, but he's really interested in Atmos. Tried it, thought it was just okay. Welcome to my world. But maybe the 6014's Atmos of height virtualization is worth a try. He'd get the upgrade from Odyssey Multi QXT to XT32. Would the 6014 be worth it? Can I just say a resounding no?
I will completely agree with saying no on that one. I mean,
if you're not interested in Atmos, then, and you're not dealing with, I mean, so his receiver should be able to pass through all the stuff.
That's right. Yeah,
the video side of stuff.
The 50. So ever since the 10 at the end of the Marantz model numbers, you were able to pass through all of the current 4K HDR, including Dolby Vision, because the ones that ended in 10 got the Dolby Vision firmware update. So he's on 11. He was the year after that. You're fine on all the video stuff. No, it won't pass 8K. You know, it won't pass 4K at 120 hertz, but nothing actually does. Yeah, Yamaha's the only one who's even announced models coming out later this year, and I'm sure everyone else will. But I wouldn't point you to a 6014. I mean, the only reason to do that is if you're like, I've got to have 11 speakers. My 5011 can't do that. So that would be a reason to upgrade, but you're not in that camp. The height virtualization, the DTS Virtual X, the Atmos height virtualization, I'm like, if you didn't care that much for actual Atmos with real speakers, then no, that is not a reason to upgrade at all for you. So what I would say is don't buy a receiver right now, because if you, Mike, are going to upgrade your receiver at some point, wait for one that has the full 48 gigabits per second HDMI 2.1, because maybe at some point in the next 10 years you upgrade your display to one that can do 4K 120 or 8K. I mean, in 10 years, you probably will only be able to buy an 8K TV, right? You're probably not going to have any choice in the matter. So I would wait for sure, at least for HDMI 2.1 in any receiver, and you really, you don't need to upgrade for a while.
I don't really, and especially with displays, I really see, them. We're quickly getting to a nexus of no one knows what the heck you're talking about, so we're not going to buy your new stupid TVs anymore. Right. The people right now who are going from HD to 4K are going home and going, I don't get it. Well, these are the same people that have everything on dynamic mode. Dolby Dolby Vision isn't working correctly. They're not going to get any of this stuff.
Well, I mean, we can joke a bit about the Super Bowl this past weekend. The first time it's being broadcast in 4K and HDR. Well, I mean, the number of comments. So John Archer over at Forbes, he was requesting, he's like, people, tell me what your experience is, what's happening trying to stream the Super Bowl in 4K and HDR. And the number of people were like, I'm watching it on my Apple TV, HDR is amazing. I'm like, you're not seeing HDR. The Apple TV 4K didn't support HDR from the Super Bowl broadcast. There were people who were like, I'm watching it on my Roku 1080p, it's amazing. I'm like, you're clearly not seeing 4K and HDR. So people literally don't know what they're even looking at. And then so I mean, and it's Mike here has got a X950G. I mean, that was just last year's 2019's full array local dimming 4K HDR Dolby Vision Sony television. You're not going to need to upgrade for that a while. Your receiver, your SR5011, can already pass through all of those signals. You don't want to go to more speakers than you have already. I'm like, you got no reason to upgrade right now, Mike.
I really feel like displays are going to go through some sort of weird transition coming up pretty soon, and I don't know if the micro LED, panel thingies are going to be the next thing. Are going to be the next thing or whatever. But pixels per inch, we're going to get away from a lot of this stuff.
I hope so, frankly.
It quite literally doesn't matter, other than the HDR and the white. But eventually, we're going to hit all visible colors. You know what I mean? It can't go past that, and we're almost there right now. So we've already got the pixels per inch such that you can sit with almost your nose to your display and you won't see any pixels. We've got almost every color that is visible, and by us at least. So what's the next thing? I don't know, but they're going to have to come up with some reason for you to buy a TV. And there is nobody out there. I don't know a single person that doesn't listen to this podcast that knows what 4K is.
Really, could actually tell you the numbers, I'm sure.
Well, not just knows what 4K is in reference to anything else. They know it's better.
Sure.
Because it says bigger. It's better on the marketing. That's it.
Yeah.
I think that most of the time they think that the screens themselves are bigger. So, all right, Tom. Not me, different guy. A few episodes ago, Tom asked about possibly changing his current DIY screen made from a piece of laminate to a acoustically transparent screen and repositioning his Sierra 2 EX speakers behind the screen. He's got this custom thing all built up front, and he's built his own stands and everything. I wish I was this handy. I am not. He said how his current screen is mounted on a simple partition wall that he built, just 2x4 framing with a single layer of drywall, so there was actually space behind his screen. So now he sent us an image so we can see behind the screen area. And it looks like it's about 5 feet deep, maybe. And there's duct work on the ceiling for AC. There's I guess that's his equipment rack back there.
Yeah, equipment rack is back there. Yep.
And storage and coolers and an American flag and other stuff. So, this is a storage area, which is great. And I can see why he put the screen where he is, because it's right flush.
Yes.
To this ductwork.
To this large ductwork. I mean, that is the thing. That ductwork is not moving without a major renovation. So, yes, where the wall is makes perfect sense. Plus, it leaves nice, not excessive, but nice walkway to his equipment rack. So it looks very appropriate.
It's perfect. I love it. So he said that if he makes holes in the drywall for a speaker and puts up an acoustically transparent screen onto the existing partition wall, then he'd lose some of his speaker's bass extension since they're rear-ported, and have to be sure the openings for the speakers are well sealed. Now that we see what's behind his partition wall, do we see any way for him to move the drywall further back? No, we don't. And then have a false wall for a screen without moving the screen closer to his seats? No, you can't move that screen back. That's it.
I mean, what you can do... Don't move that wall. That would be nuts, man.
Well, the other thing is, too, I mean, so if you're not watching YouTube, where his ductwork is coming in, there is it looks like a massive opening to another thing. I don't know what another room or something. So this back wall here is actually... if we took and made that wall, if we took the drywall down and just put speaker grill cloth, we're not just opening up to this extra 5 feet, which would be fine. We could put a subwoofer back there or whatever. No, we're not. We're opening up to whatever that leads to.
Yeah.
So now we've gone from this room, which is an enclosed rectangle where everything works well, to this room plus space, which I imagine is the rest of his basement or whatever it is. And it's
very well could be.
Could be, yeah. So, I still think that how your system is set up right now is good.
Yeah,
well, was the reason he wanted a bigger screen? Was that the deal?
I honestly don't know. He didn't mention. I mean, my thinking was that maybe he's wanting to transition from CinemaScope to 16:9, and then he wouldn't have the height, keeping the same width. But I'm looking at this. I see two solutions here. Three. One, don't do anything at all, because you've already got a really nice setup. Number two would be continue to keep your speakers below your screen. If you want to change your screen in some way, but keep the speakers below the screen. But number three would be don't do anything to that drywall wall that is behind your screen at present. Don't do anything to that at all. But you could bring an acoustically transparent screen a little closer to your seats. You don't need a ton of space behind it. I mean, literally 1 foot would be just enough. I'd go 1.5 feet. That'd be nice. 1.5 feet with some insulation that is right behind your speakers. Your speakers essentially butted right back against that insulation. That's fine. You're not blocking airflow when the ports are going into insulation. That would be the only way I would really come at this, Tom. If you're gonna make that change to an acoustic transparent screen, bring the screen a bit forward and put insulation behind your speakers.
Just so that everybody else understands, what's going on is he's built a wall, like a very thin wall at the back of his room that butts up against this thing. Then on that wall is his screen. Then below his screen is a jut out, which is like it's basically open. It's just 2x4 framing, it looks like, or whatever, where his speakers are in this jut out. What Rob's suggesting, and I agree with, is you could then move your screen forward so that it's flush with the jut out.
Pretty much.
So this would
maybe not even that far.
Yeah, so you can move the screen forward that way. Now, you don't need acoustically transparent. You don't need anything other than what you have right now. You just build out closer, and now you've expanded your field of view. So if the
if that's
bigger
what he
screen
wants,
is
or
what you're going for.
if he's wanting to change the shape of his screen so that it would be too tall to keep the screen above the speakers, then again, you just move it enough forward that the speakers can go behind it without touching the drywall that's behind your current screen, and that would be the way to do this.
Yes, I agree. All right. I have to scroll down. Yeah. So he's been reading up on DIY acoustically transparent screens, and one popular recommendation is a dual layer of spandex. Welcome to AVS Forum. Do we have any thoughts or experience on that? Well, I mean, you can project onto anything if you try hard enough. I'm not in love with this. I mean, we're going to
hate the idea of spandex. That is, oh my goodness.
Well, it usually is kind of sparkly, right? Spandex. I mean,
not only that, it's the stretchiest thing you could ever deal with. I mean, trying to secure that DIY to a screen. Oh my god, stretchy is like the enemy of what you want. You don't want stretchy screen fabric. That's horrible to deal with.
The thing is as you stretch it, you're going to be pulling the weave further and further apart, and that's just
not evenly, man. Like nobody can stretch spandex evenly. Forget it. Don't do that. And the dual
There's so many
layer?
jokes that just popped into my head that I none of them were appropriate for this podcast. But remind me afterwards, Rob. You and I will discuss how spandex can be stretched evenly by people.
I hate this idea so much. No, don't. And you know what? Getting the raw fabric from Seymour AV, it's not that bad. Like, no, yes, it costs more than a roll of spandex. I'll grant you that. But like, it's not bad, man. Just get the proper material.
Yeah, and where are you going to get this roll of spandex that's going to be, 5 feet tall, so that you're not having to put two layers like overlapping with a seam? I don't know, or 3 or 4 to get this, because it's usually like 3 feet wide, right? So how do you do this? Look, if you were a college student with a dorm room, and you were looking to build a screen, for your little dorm room, or so that you could have, that, and you said, "Can I use spandex?" I would still say no. I would say project
some other fabric. There's better fabrics than that.
I would say get a white sheet, iron
get
it,
a blackout curtain, right? That's what you want.
Yeah.
One of those white blackout sheets, but which wouldn't be acoustically transparent. But no, don't do this. Just pay the couple $100 extra money and get the proper screen. That you wanted the gain too. You're not going to get the gain from spandex. You're going to get the gain properly from Seymour AV. So
I still don't think he needs acoustically transparent. Unless
I know.
I still think he can just move that screen forward and be good with life. But that's just me. John, if you were already using the previous model of NVidia Shield as a Plex server, is there any advantage offered by the newest version specifically as a Plex server? Is it so much more powerful that it would be noticeably faster or better in any way? I don't know, because I don't use Plex and I don't use NVIDIA Shield, but Rob does, so he has the perfect answer. And my answer is no.
I will also tell you, no. As a Plex server, the bottleneck is my storage. Nothing to do with the Plex's processor in there. Yeah, the brand new, the 2019 Plex or NVIDIA Shield Pro, and it would have to be the Pro, because the NVIDIA Shield Pro from the 2019 lineup is the only one that can act as a Plex server. It is a more powerful processor in there, but that's pretty much all to do with their new upscaling that they're in there and being able to support Dolby Vision. As far as being a Plex server and doing its transcoding and that, the bottleneck is the storage, not the processor, so you'll see no difference going from the old one to the new one. If you're trying to justify getting a new one just to be a server, then no. As a playback device, it's got a few new features.
All right. James says he appreciates the advice we gave him about not installing his 5 in-ceiling to-noise speakers and in-ceiling 8-inch to-noise sub in his open living room. Good, because some people get real mad when we tell them not to do stuff. He likes our suggestion of using them for whole house audio instead, and he'd like to have speakers for his garage and his covered patio, so that might all work out nicely. Great. Fine, put them there. As we mentioned, that in-ceiling speakers need to have back enclosures for fire safety reasons. These to-noise all have back cans already attached, even the 8-inch sub. I keep wanting to put sub in quotes, air quotes, in case my voice is not conveying that. My mind is putting air quotes around an 8-inch sub, no matter who makes it, okay? Not just to-noise, anyone. So does he still need enclosures in addition to those? No, he does not.
Nope, these are fine. That is the back can that we would want you to have, and those are good to go.
Yeah. So what's the simplest way to create distributed audio and power these to noise speakers? He still has his Pioneer VSX 830 5.1 receiver that isn't being used for anything else, and he has a Pioneer home theater in a box lying around too. Could he just use those and some Echo Dots? I mean, yeah, I don't see why not. You would now have you would have to use more remote controls than maybe you wanted to.
Or just leave the receivers powered on at all times. Because if the whole idea is to open your app or just talk to your assistant and have it play music in these other rooms, the AV receivers themselves would have to be powered up. So you could do that potentially through an app. I'm not sure if these models actually have an app where you'd be able to do that, but you'd have to open the Pioneer app first and turn it on and then go to the assistant. It's a little bit janky, so you'd either have to leave them powered on all the time or do that type of thing.
If you think about it this way, if you had a distributed amp, which is one of the other solutions for this, it's essentially, unless it's got, like Rob said, a power on and power off, either through our app or through IR control, you would need to do something along the same lines. So it would not be a huge difference if you got one of these other things. So leaving them on all the time, I know people are like, oh my God, it's going to draw so much power. It really just sits there. It doesn't do much.
It draws less power than your cable box, that even when you put your cable box in standby, it draws exactly the same amount of power as when it's on. It draws less power than that. So, when it's just sitting there idle. So that would be totally fine. I mean, it's absolutely sufficient to drive the speakers. The Pioneer receiver does bass management, so you could even make use of that 8-inch in-ceiling sub. Like say in your garage, you could totally make use of it. It would be fine. I'm totally fine with doing that. And some Echo Dots just connected to any of the stereo inputs of those AV receivers would work just fine. If you wanted a device where you don't, it is being left on all the time, but it's not like a full-sized AV receiver, and it sounds like he's in the Amazon ecosystem. Amazon does have their Echo Link amp. It's $300, so it's not super duper cheap, but it is
buy a new receiver for that.
It is an Echo already, and then it also is a 60-watt ×2 amplifier. It actually does have a subwoofer output itself and a crossover, so it's a nice device like that. It's cheaper than the Sonos equivalent, so that's how they're claiming their value at that price point. But that would be a way, if let's say he wanted to add even more in the future, and he doesn't have even more AV receivers lying around, you could expand it that way with the Echo Link amp. But Echo Dots to your existing AV receivers and let them power the speakers. That'll work totally fine.
Yeah, I think so too. Gurinder saw that we went through the settings for the Panasonic UB9000 Ultra HD Blu-ray player. He's using a Panasonic UB420 with his JVC X790 projector, and most of the same settings apply. But would we suggest a different setting for the HDR optimizer in the case of his 790? I don't know. Would we?
So it's a little bit tricky. I'll first say that, once again, over at HDTV Test with Vincent Teo, he went in depth with the UB9000 and really explaining the HDR optimizer and exactly what the settings do. Now, it's important to note that the UB9000, the flagship in Panasonic's Ultra HD Blu-ray player lineup, does have two settings available within the HDR optimizer that do not show up in the 820 or the 420 model players. And those are the ones that actually say they are for projectors specifically. But all they do is offer a 500 nit tone map and I believe it's 300 or 350 nit tone map for the bottom one. Now, you can get a 500 nit tone map still by simply choosing the, forget the exact name, it's the lowest light output. There's one that's like low, medium, high for LCDs. Well, the low is 500, the medium is 1,000, and the high is like 1,500 nits. So you can still choose the 500 as an option. It's just whatever the lowest light output for under the LCDs are. So with the X790, you could certainly give that a try. I mean, you're not hitting 500 nits, but when everything has already been retone mapped by the player to fit within a maximum 500 nit, and then the X790 is doing its own tone mapping on top of that to just bring it within its capabilities, that might give you better results. However, like almost all projectors, that can do HDR, they're already basically set up for 1000 nit content. They're like, that's what we expect to get is 1000 nit content. The tone mapping that we have inside the projector already is set up for 1000 nit. You feed us 4000 or 10,000, that's where you're going to start clipping and losing detail. But if you send us 1000, they should be able to tone map that pretty well. So if you basically leave it at the default, which is the medium in the LCD or the OLED setting, it'll be sending out 1000 nits, and the X790 should tone map that well. So go ahead and experiment with the lower one, the 500 nit one, but the 1000 actually should be correct.
So when he leaves the UB420's resolution setting as auto, it upscales everything to 4K, but even though his 790 can accept 4K signals, it is actually a wobble K projector, so there's an option to turn that off and just use the native 1080p resolution. So is there an option in the 420, the UB420 player, to have it output 4K disc as 4K, but 1080p Blu-ray disc as 1080p? I don't know.
Not automatically, unfortunately. You can certainly go in there and manually change it, because you can change it to 1080p output or 4K output, as an all the time, but not an automatic switching back and forth, unfortunately.
I don't really think that scaling from 1080p to 4K is going to cause any problems.
Well, I think it's just that, that gives you the option of exact one-to-one pixel mapping when it's a 1080p signal.
Yeah, I know.
But no, you'd have to go into the menu and manually change it every time.
So the UP420 offers the option to convert HDR content down to SDR, but still retain the white color. And quite a few users online say they prefer doing this versus actually sending HDR to the 790. What do we suggest doing? I guess I'm going to read all these questions and let Rob answer because I don't have any answers for these questions.
So the thing was,
I need a 790 projector apparently.
The thing was, most of the recommendation for converting HDR down to SDR but retaining the wide color, a lot of that came prior to these Panasonic players existing. Back when everybody was using an Oppo or perhaps using one of the Sony players, those would, if it was 4000 nit content or 10,000 nit content, that's what got sent to the projector, and a bunch of the highlight detail got clipped off. That's the way the projectors reacted to that signal coming in, 4000 or 10,000 nits. But at 1000 nits, they don't do much clipping of the signal. They have that tone map pretty well sorted out. So the Panasonic player, since they can make sure it never comes out as more than 1000 nits, it works quite well. So when you have an X790 combined with a Panasonic player specifically, I don't see a big reason to convert the HDR down to SDR. It does a good job in its HDR mode. That's my answer there. Keep it outputting HDR.
So if he sets his Marantz receiver video settings so that he can see the volume level on the screen, does that impact the picture quality at all? So for those of you that don't have never experienced this, basically, in order to see the volume and other things on your screen, you have to turn video processing on.
Right.
And video processing is like scaling and all that other stuff that receivers can do. Mm-hmm. And we often say, don't let your receiver do any of that. But to see the volume, you have to turn it on. Mm-hmm. But you turn it on and you tell it, don't do anything.
Yeah.
Basically, you set everything to leave it alone or pass through or whatever.
Turn its scaling off, turn its deinterlacing off, all of which you can do inside the Marantz, so that's okay.
So will it affect the picture quality? As long as you turn all those things off, it will not. What it will do is add a little bit more delay, audio delay, as it goes up to your projector. If you're playing a game like Rock Band or something like that, you will notice that. You will notice that. You probably will never notice it in any other types of content. And you won't get, your lip sync won't go off or anything.
The receiver itself will almost certainly get hotter. Just by having the video processing active, even though it isn't really doing anything, just that chip is active now. It tends to generate substantially more heat. So make sure you're well ventilated. If you need to put some little, case fans above there to make sure that the air is circulating really well, you can do that. But it won't degrade your picture quality in some way just passing it through.
Yeah. One of his kids kicked a ball into one of his Polk speakers, and now the tweeter has a little dent in it. Obviously, it doesn't sound bad. Will it be okay to pull the dent back out? Will that fix it? Okay, so, dude, I completely 100% feel you. Okay. Most speaker designers I've spoken to and that I've asked this question of, no one has ever told me that having a dent will affect negatively the sound in your tweeter. That's coming from your speaker. Tears, weak points could cause distortion Because basically think of the tweeter or the driver, whatever driver it is a piston. It goes back and forth and back and forth. And it's pushing air as it goes. The air itself doesn't care what shape it is in as it's being pushed. So the little dent is not really making a difference there. What could be making a difference is where the dent is. There could be now a weak spot where now we're going to get some resonances there that we wouldn't have gotten. That's where you run into problems. And to my mind, trying to pull out the dent so that it visually looks better is creating more potential problems than it solves. I would just leave it.
So,
go on, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, these Polk speakers, other than the LSI series with its ring radiator tweeter, which doesn't sound like that's what he's dealing with here. They all use soft dome tweeters. Now, I mean, I've seen, the advice out there like, a little piece of tape, you put it on there, but if there's anything metallized on the outside of that tweeter at all, sometimes that coating comes off even with light adhesive, and I'd be wary about that. The other advice that sometimes is out there is you basically suck on it.
Kiss that tweeter, buddy.
A little bit of suction, and it doesn't take much. Be careful, but I'd maybe be willing to do that much. I wouldn't put tape on it. I don't like that idea very much of putting the little piece of tape.
Tape is the most often solution. The one time I had a dent in a tweeter, that's what I did. I did the suction.
You did the suction.
Yeah, and believe me, no one could look each other in the eye afterwards. I just never able to look at that speaker again in the same way. So I honestly, I know it's going to drive you crazy and you're going to do it anyways, because it drove me crazy and I did it. So I've been there, but the reality is you're risking more harm for a visual appeal. The sound certainly doesn't care. So it's up to you, man, but that's the solution.
A little bit of suction.
Suck that tweeter. Yeah.
Yep.
You want to go ahead and write down the title of the podcast now, so don't forget?
Yes.
So we used to have a listener many years ago who would, every time we said something stupid like that, he would create an image of it and send it in to us.
Right.
God help, remember? He used to put our heads on things.
That was way
God help
ago.
us if that guy was around listening to this podcast right now. I'd be embarrassed for what my head would be doing in that image. All right, Bill got a pair of upward firing Atmos enabled modules and connected them to his Denon X1400H receiver. He reran the setup wizard and identified them as Dolby front Dolby speakers. He's using an Xbox One S as his only source. He set it to bitstream audio output with Atmos as the bitstream type. Before I read the rest of this question, the Xbox is your problem. He checked out Netflix and the Dolby Access app, and those seem to work perfectly. Netflix shows that are in Atmos have an Atmos logo, and the Atmos lit up on his Denon. But for Amazon Prime Video and for Disney Plus, nothing has an Atmos logo. Everything just says 5.1. Did he mess something up? Does he need to do an update? Is the problem his receiver, his Xbox, or just those two apps? Oh, in this case, it's the apps. I mean, I don't think that they actually put out Atmos yet, do they?
Yeah, so Disney Plus, the only device where Atmos is coming out of Disney Plus right now, and what is this, February 4th, 2020. This will change in the future, people watching in the future. But at this time, Disney Plus, the only device that supports Atmos is the Apple TV 4K. So you have done nothing wrong there. Your Xbox One S has no ability to output anything other than 5.1 audio from Disney Plus at this time. I'm sure there'll be an update coming in the future, but that's the way it is. You did nothing wrong there. Amazon Prime Video, the only thing I know for sure actually has Atmos is the first season of Jack Ryan. I am not certain that anything else on Amazon Prime Video even has Atmos. They didn't label it. They didn't put an Atmos logo on it, but the first season of Jack Ryan does have Atmos. The second season doesn't. They didn't bother with it in the second season. It doesn't have Dolby Vision on the second season either. So first season of Jack Ryan only. So play that. If that works, then you've set everything up correct. I mean, I can tell you've set everything up correctly anyway.
Yeah.
But that's really the issue there. It's not even the apps in the case of the Amazon Prime Video app there. It's just the content itself. They barely have anything in Atmos on the service. Yeah.
Alvin. A while back, Alvin got an Onkyo RZ730 receiver and set up a 7.2.4 Atmos configuration. Excuse me. His main sources are his Amazon Fire 4K TV stick and his Xbox One. Let me just stop right here and tell you the Xbox One is the problem.
Oh, so biased. That's where our downvotes come from, man. People like the Xbox One.
All the Microsoft fans are out there like,
the
Tom,
Xbox One is the greatest streaming device
device ever created.
Oh, dear.
So he set his Xbox One to bitstream and the bitstream type to Atmos. When he plays an Atmos disc, his Onkyo receiver doesn't say Atmos on the front panel, but he can press the info button. It shows both the input and output as it being Atmos, and everything sounds correct coming from his speakers. But he plays a regular DVD and he presses it on it. It's the Xbox. If he plays a regular DVD and he presses his Onkyo's info button, it still says the input and output are Atmos. There's no sound coming out of the overhead speakers, though. Can we help? Yes. When you told it to output Atmos, it outputs Atmos. It takes everything that comes in and puts it into an Atmos container and pops it out there.
But here,
the Xbox One.
Since he's playing physical discs, there is a fix. In this case, for physical discs, there is that fix because there is the separate menu. It's not the sound and the video and audio settings in the Xbox One. It's a completely separate menu.
Like that,
yeah, it's the disc menu. Within your settings for the Xbox One, there is a separate menu that is just for discs, and there is a little checkbox that says "Let my receiver decode audio," and you have to check that box. It's not checked by default. So you have to go into that second menu, the disc menu, and check "Let my receiver decode audio." At that point, it will output the bit stream that is just on the disc itself. What's on the disc will just come out of the player. So there is a fix for this one. Hooray!
Yeah. I'm glad they finally did that, by the way. That's great. So the Onkyo gives him no option for which pair of speakers.
We missed one here. We missed B.
Did I miss one? Mm-hmm. Oh. For his Amazon 4K Fire TV stick, what he really wants is for it to output the native audio format of whatever content he's watching. Well, it sucks to be you because Microsoft doesn't care.
There's a thing for this one in particular, the 4K stick.
So have stereo come out as stereo, have Dolby Digital Plus come out as Dolby Digital Plus, have the Atmos come out as Atmos, etc. Is there a way to do that? But it doesn't matter. I'm sorry. I'm thinking for some reason he was talking about Amazon Prime coming out of his Xbox One, which is not the question. The question is, how does he get the Fire 4K TV stick to output whatever the actual content was? And I'm sure there's a setting within the Fire stick.
There is. So with the Amazon 4K Fire TV stick, you got to scroll down to the bottom. That's where you get to the settings, and then it's the one that is picture and sound, or display and sound, or display and audio, whatever it is. You can figure out because it says something about picture and sound in there. Now with this one, with the 4K devices, they give you the option of best available, and it wasn't even always there. That's like a not that somewhat recent addition in there. But there is the option of best available audio. You choose that, and it does what you want it to do. Atmos comes out as Atmos. Dolby Digital Plus comes out as Dolby Digital Plus. If stereo is the only thing that's there, it comes out as stereo. So hooray, it does what we all want it to do. Best available.
So Onkyo gives him no option for which pair of speakers in the 7.2.4 setup are powered by an external amp. The surround backs have to be powered externally, and that is it. While he was doing his cleaning, he discovered that the 2-channel amp for his surround backs was powered off. He has no idea how long it's been off. How did he not notice? Is there really just so little sound coming out of the surround back speakers? Yes. No, but you're just not that sensitive to surround backs, and this is why I am constantly recommending people skip surround backs unless it's a very specific situation. The times I have noticed my surround backs, the times it's very rare, and it's almost always in horror movies, and it's always when something's happening like way off to your left, back left, or way off to your back right. That's when the surround backs I've noticed. That, and when my Xbox One took everything and put the surround information to the surround backs, and I was like, holy crap, my surround backs are freaking killing it tonight. And that was because the surrounds were off.
The other part of it is, since Alvin is primarily using his Xbox One as his source, and we know that prior to all this, he had it set to Bitstream and Atmos, but he didn't have the Let My Receiver Decode audio for discs. So for discs, he was getting probably a lot of them were just 5.1, so there was nothing coming out of the surround backs anyway, even if they had been powered on. And then for like a lot of games, for especially a lot of streaming, if he's been mostly streaming, most streaming is still 5.1
it's 5.1. Yeah.
So there legitimately wasn't anything coming out of, even if they had been powered on, there wasn't anything coming out of them a lot of the time.
Yeah, now that you've fixed your settings, just assume that this is the first time they've been used at all in your home theater. So you watched the Home Theater Guru YouTube video about calibrating your speakers and subs to THX reference level. He mentioned setting your master volume to 0 dB before you play receiver's pink noise, and then he mentioned that for home calibrations, all the speakers should measure with SPL meter at 30 dB below the full 105 dB reference volume peaks, so 75 dB. But then he said because the subwoofer LV channel peaks up at 15 dB, it should measure at 85. Alvin wasn't too sure about that, but he measured in his own speakers without worrying about the subwoofer output level. And his SPL meter said all his floor speakers were at 80 dB and his Atmos speakers were at 83 dB. Is that terribly wrong? Does it mean he's running everything hot? He never listens at full reference volume. Typically, he's negative 20 dB on the volume dial. So I'm assuming that his receiver set up everything for him.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure. I would think. I mean, it came with AccuEQ. I would guess that he used it to set distances and levels, if nothing else. But...
So the reality here is that, yes, okay, so if you have set if your receiver is set, whatever, say you did your own calibration, whatever, instead of setting everything to 75, you set it to 80.
Sure.
It doesn't truly matter that you set everything to 80 versus 75, as long as they're all at 80 or 75.
Yes.
And so... while this, if there were different, the front three were at 80 and the back were at 95 and the tops were at 76, I would be concerned.
Right.
But between 80 and 83, I think that having your tops a little bit hot is probably not a bad idea, just to get them
also
little bit more
the way Onkyo actually measures the overhead speakers is a slightly different. They do a gated response where they ignore the first little response because they're like, we know some of this sound is coming from the front and we're going to pretend to ignore that. So that's not really surprising. There's also the fact that I don't know if he's using, like, you can't get the Radio Shack SPL meters anymore, but maybe he's using an SPL app on his phone.
Right.
And those aren't necessarily calibrated themselves completely correctly. You're actually supposed to calibrate your SPL meter app against a reference SPL meter, which I'm like, well, if you already had a reference SPL meter, why are you downloading the SPL meter app? So it's entirely possible that the app itself, if that's what you're using, is not totally accurate. But there's ultimately no problem with what you've done here. But however, going back to that Home Theater Guru YouTube video, they're wrong about when you use the built-in pink noise of your AV receiver, that the pink noise coming out of your subwoofer, if you're using one, should measure at 85. That's not the case.
Everything should measure at 75.
Everything should measure at 75. I mean, Odyssey will tell you that flat out before you even begin if you're using Odyssey. But no, it should measure 75 across all because it's one of two scenarios. Either they're playing a regular reference signal, a full range reference volume signal where negative 30 dB compared to full reference of a full range signal will be 75. Or if they are actually using a dedicated LFE output, which they're not, by the way, because the subwoofer output is not only for LFE. LFE can be played out of theoretically any speaker. It's its own separate channel. The LFE channel is what is allowed to go up to 115. The subwoofer output, it's just taking bass from any speakers that are set to small plus the LFE channel. The LFE channel is 10 decibels louder. So no, they're wrong about that. Everything, including the subwoofer, should measure 75 dB from the built-in pink noise of the AV receiver.
Right. So they're basically telling everybody to set their subs
10 dB hot. Yeah.
So in case you were wondering who's paying the bills over there, DTS. DTS is paying the bills over there. They love to run them hot.
Well, now they're 20 dB hot because a lot of DTS, the LFE channel is 10 dB hot, and now your subs have been channel trimmed 10 dB hotter than they should be.
If we were less honest, we should do this. I'm not saying they're doing it dishonestly. I'm saying that we know the difference. And if we told people to run their subs 10 dB hot, they'd be like, oh my God, I followed your stuff, and it's never sounded better in here.
We know how many people are not looking for an actual flat frequency response because it's not super exciting. A flat frequency response is not thrilling. It just is what it is.
Michael is the fellow who asked us about upgrading his DefTech towers to either Paradigm Premier Series towers or SVS Prime Pinnacle towers. We talked about how at the price range, $1,600 to $2,000 a pair, there are so many options. But in particular, if he goes with bookshelf speakers instead of towers, he'd be able to consider some really high-end offerings. But we didn't know his room size or seating distance, and he wants to power his speakers with his Marantz SR7012 receiver. So he wrote back. His room is 12 feet wide, 38 feet long, and 7 feet high, and he sits 15 feet away from his speakers. So do we still think bookshelves, or is he the sort of setup where towers make sense? Well, it limits your bookshelf options slightly, but it also gives you the ability to buy an amp and have me not say you're wrong for doing so. So, so do you want towers by themselves and no amp, or do you want an amp and bookshelf speakers? Because I'd take the amp and bookshelf speakers myself. But
15 feet away, though, that's enough where I'm like, okay, towers start to make sense. I mean, like you said, there are bookshelves that can handle that, but it's the larger and higher efficiency bookshelf models. Most normal book, the 6.5-inch woofer 2-way bookshelf is it basically is a 4-meter speaker, right? It's a 12 to 13 feet. That's what almost all regular, you look at them, bookshelf speakers are. They're great to 4 meters, and that's about it if you want to be hitting close to full reference volume. So 15 feet away, you're far enough that I'm like, okay, now towers make a lot of sense. I'm certainly not going to tell somebody they're out to lunch at that point.
No, I don't need. So I agree with you.
Again, if he's going back, he's staying in this price range. He's 15 feet away. Like the Prime Pinnacles they're gonna be great. And plus, you know what? If you get them and you're like, maybe there's something even better, like you can return them for free, including the shipping. So I'm like, Michael, go order yourself some Prime Pinnacles. I think you'll be really happy.
I mean, like I said, you can still go bookshelves. You would have to look for something that's a little bit higher efficiency. You might be looking at an amplifier. But I mean, then again, we're talking about 3 feet, right? You're sitting 15 feet away. If you can move your speakers 3 feet closer to you, into your room, suddenly the world of bookshelf speakers opens up to you again.
Right.
So,
but I was talking about Sierra 2s because they're in this price range. I'm like 15 feet. That's pushing it. It honestly is pushing it. So it does change the dynamic quite a bit there, Michael. And I'm prepared to just say go buy some Pinnacles.
I'd be all right with that. Josh thinks I can't say the word Josh apparently. Josh thinks it's finally time to get around to finishing his basement. He wants an office as he works from home, and his daughter wants a fun place to hang out with her friends, and they both want to watch movies on a huge screen. The stairs basically come down the middle of his basement. To the left there will be where the hangout area theater goes, and to the right will be Josh's office, plus a washroom and the utility room, and he'll have doors at the bottom of the stairs for his office and the washroom. So what's left open for the theater area will be L-shaped. The main portion of his theater will be 14.5 by 18 feet, and there'll be an additional 9 feet by 13-foot section forming the L in front of the stairs leading to his office. I am totally confused, but we'll get this.
Well, come down the stairs. They're in the middle. Turn to your left. There's this open living room theater area there. Straight ahead of you is still an open area. So the theater, living room, you turn around to the left. That's in front of the stairs. That's your L shape. And then to the right of the stairs is your office. And then also to the right, but beside the stairs is your bathroom and utility room. So the total of the basement is like a square U shape. With the stairs in the middle. Yeah.
And so the left side. So is the theater going to be to the left side of
It'll be to the left side. Yeah. You come down the stairs over to the left where it says living room in the diagram he sent us is what will be this new theater area. But it's basically half of the back of the theater is open if you're thinking of it that way. Or like half
so you come down the stairs and you land in directly to where the wall was as you were walking down the stairs. On the other side of that wall, on one side would be the bathroom and the utility room. On the other side of the other side of that wall would be the home theater. Then in front of you and to the left as you walk in would be all the play area,
open
I guess,
space. Yeah.
So Josh is basically trying to decide where he should put the screen. The bulk of his budget will be just finishing the basement, so he'd rather not have to buy all new furniture. He's got a big 14-foot wide couch that he'd love to use down there, plus a couple of individual recliners. So his thought was to put the screen on the 18-foot wall, then his 14-foot couch can go along the 10-foot section right beside the stairs, plus take up some of the open section.
I don't know what I was typing there.
With that.
Yes,
okay.
That's sorry.
The couple recliners could be on either side, and they could throw up some beanbag chairs if needed. Do we agree that this wider orientation makes sense? If he's keeping the 14-foot wide couch and he uses the narrow orientation, he'd have to do 2 rows of with a riser for the couch, and he'd rather avoid doing all that. What do we think? I am again confused here. So he wants to put the screen on which wall?
So imagine you came down the stairs, you turned directly to your left. You can see over there, it's marked as 20, but that's the exterior. So it's the long wall, right? You turn to your left, the wall you're facing now is the long wall. He's thinking put the screen there, and then opposite that, so like basically directly to the left of the stairs and into that opening would be his 14-foot couch. His 14-foot wide couch. Because if you're thinking, you look at this room, it's listed as 15 feet 11 inches wide, but again, that's the exterior dimensions of it. So he's like, within that is like 14 and a half feet. So basically, the 14-foot wide couch would take up the whole thing. So he's like, sure, that could go back against one wall. It could go on the open side, and you could face down. You could do that, but then if he wants to have more sitting in there, it would have to be like a second row. He'd have to have a riser. So can he just have the room be wider than it is long, have the open section as one half of the back, and have his wide couch just stretching across? That orientation or facing the other way?
I think it's fine.
I think the wide orientation is fine. I'm perfectly fine with that.
It's just, depending on how his couch is oriented in this thing, because it would overlap into the open area.
Into the open,
from what I'm
yes,
understanding.
it would.
Yeah.
It would.
So it might look a little strange, but your whole theater would be offset to the left of this open area, and you would be kind of spilling off into the open area. You would then also, you'd be dealing with having surround speakers that are either going to be on your ceiling, because there's not going to be a back wall on the right side.
Correct.
Of the theater. So either on the ceiling or on the side walls and way to the side and into this open area here, which is interesting.
But I mean, they could be side to side. They'd be 18 feet apart. They'd be the full width of the room apart. But that's not bad. You'd have no surround back speakers. Backs wouldn't make surround back
speakers in here. Yeah.
But I think the wide. I think the wide makes it, like, given that he has this 14-foot couch that he doesn't want to have to replace, which totally makes sense. I think the wide orientation makes sense. This isn't like a fully dedicated theater, but he's aware of that. It's a hangout area. You're going to have this huge screen. It could be retractable even if you wanted to, and that way you can, don't have to worry about the screen being down all the time and potentially getting damaged or something. And, you got this big area. You come down the stairs, when you turn to your left, like, the back of your couch is going to be there, for about, I don't know, 3-4 feet going into this opening. But you'll walk around that, and now you're into that area. I think that's fine.
So if he goes the wide route, then half of the back of the theater area will be open be the open section. Wouldn't it make sense to do surround back speakers? Right? Yes, we already said that. Mm-hmm. Stick to 5.2.4.
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out where you get the 4 though, because if you're going to be right on that back wall,
well, it doesn't have to be right on that back wall.
It's going to be awfully close if he wants a humongous screen, which is what I think he really wants. And then you're talking about having the couch out from it. It's going to be overlapping and spilling into this other area, and then there's going to be a space behind the couch as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
it doesn't have to be a huge space. It could be 2 feet.
I see front heights and top middles if you go this direction.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, you'd have, if you have Atmos speakers, they'd be basically directly above the couch. More or less. Maybe not even outside the outsides of this couch, because this is an extra wide couch. So they might not even be, outside the side edges of the couch, but over the couch and then like 5 feet in front of the couch. That's fine. And no surround backs.
Right. No surround backs. Yeah. He says there's no reason to consider more than 4 overheads in here, correct?
No.
Yeah, I mean, you got no place to put them.
No.
All right, what are we doing time-wise here? I want to make
Well, it depends on you, because we started an hour late, basically, so.
Yeah, I know, that's why but I have to go get my foreign exchange student from school at 2:00. So, and I have to eat at some point.
Well,
I don't eat breakfast, so lunch is an extremely important meal for me.
We're an hour and 20 in, so let's try and do what we can.
I see. We'll do a couple more. Paul currently uses an Onkyo receiver with Accu EQ and a 5.2.2 speaker configuration. He's got Revell Performa 3 speakers with dual SVS SB16 Ultra subs. But aesthetics demand he put both subs at the front of the room, and it is what it is. All right, he's considering an upgrade to 9 or 11 speaker setup with a Marantz or Denon receiver. He listens to more music than movies or TV and enjoys using an upmixer rather than just straight 2-channel. Before he goes spending the money, he wants to make sure he'll actually hear a difference. At the moment, he uses a Dolby Surround upmixer for music, and his 5.2.2 configuration actually has rear heights as the Atmos speakers, so they're above and behind him. He's heard a lot of praise for the automatic upmixer that comes with
Auromatic.
3D.
Auromatic.
Yes. What did I say? Automatic?
You said automatic, which is not surprising because that would be a normal word.
I just thought you spelt it wrong.
No, this is Auromatic. Yes.
Upmixer that comes with Auro 3D. Will that be an improvement over Dolby Surround? Will it be worth getting? My guess, without ever having heard it, is no.
So
I think that dog just passed gas.
Nobody
like,
can
super loud
see your dog.
I know, but I think it was loud enough that the microphone might have picked it up. It was.
I didn't.
I heard it through the headphones.
So honestly, I don't have any experience with the Auromatic Upmixer, so I can't offer a direct, opinion on that. Ted on Twitter was actually saying that he has been going ahead and comparing these upmixers specifically for music. So he said he thought that the Auromatic Upmixer was the most enveloping and ultimately the most pleasing, but he does say that the Dolby Surround has the cleanest center image. So there's a bit of a schmooing of the sound across the front there, which does tend to be the case in a lot of the music-based upmixers. They spread the front left and right into the center, but don't remove the center and put it solely into the center speaker. That is very common with the music upmixers. So what I mean, is he asking should he do it specifically for Auro? I mean, the thing is, if you get one of the modern 9 or 11 speaker Denon or Marantz receivers, you're gonna get Auro anyway. It's not an extra cost anymore. It's already built in, so you can try it. It's not. You're not having to pay any extra. It's just going to be there for you to give a try.
This is a very odd configuration. So he's got 5.2.2 with rear heights.
That's right. That is unusual.
That's a very unusual. And the first thing I would look at almost any receiver that we would buy these days is making sure you can even do that. There may be some receivers that wouldn't allow you to, but how far behind you are they? Are they really far behind you? Or are they a little bit behind you?
Yeah, I imagine
they're a little bit behind you.
High up on his rear wall, but
yeah, I would. If they're not, though, then I would consider switching them to
just
middles,
call them top middles, right?
Yeah, just call them top middles. I'll be honest with you. You would have to show me hard data to convince me that any upmixer was significantly better than any other upmixer, because in almost all the cases, what they're doing is taking the sound, using some sort of algorithm to extrapolate, okay, based on phase and how and what speakers, where this sound is in these different speakers, where would this be in a 3-dimensional space? Or before we got to Atmos, in a 2-dimensional space, where would it be? And honestly, this is not a computational heavy program. These are not hard things to figure out. So all the DTS or whatever, the differences tend to be in what choices they make as far as, how do they run their subwoofers hot? Do they make slight alterations to the sound for different reasons of their own? I don't really think that there's a humongous difference between the way that Yamaha does it versus Denon does it, or Marantz or Pioneer or whatever. Dolby versus DTS. The DTS, what do? They goose the subwoofer a little bit.
And they goose the overheads,
we all know
too.
That. They do. They goose the overheads now that we have Atmos.
A bit louder, yeah. He's really saying, because, we always say we want 4 overhead speakers for actual Atmos, because otherwise you don't get front-to-back panning. To me, that's worthwhile having, but he's like, he doesn't really watch that many movies and TV. He mostly listens to music. He does like to use an upmixer when listening to music, but are 4 overheads for music worth it? Like, is it really worth it to get 4 overheads instead of just 2 when primarily he's listening to music?
Yeah.
God, that really is tough.
I don't really think so. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah,
but he's
get a whole lot of front-to-back panning just from the upmixer when it began as 2-channel.
Yeah, but he's actually, unless I'm reading this wrong, he's not actually asking about getting more speakers. He's asking about just getting a different upmixer. Just
no, but he is, because he's starting now. His current model tops out at 7 speakers total, so he's like, he could get a 9 or 11 speaker setup. Oh. He's going to the 5.2.4.
Oh, okay. I didn't scroll back up enough. Yeah,
type of setting. So
just for music, I don't think that you would have to be listening to very specific types of music that they are working with, and I would call it electronica sort of stuff,
right,
where they are working with trying to move it in a 3-dimensional space anyways, using and that music tends to be very experimental and weird, and
I think
if that's not what you're listening to,
what I would do is tell you actually hold off for now, because Atmos music is gaining ground. More and more things are being made in Atmos music, but the problem is we don't have a lot of choices of where to actually obtain that music. The biggest one is Amazon Music HD, where you can't input it into your Atmos receiver yet. That's coming. We're waiting for devices to let you do that, or for the built-in apps on the receivers themselves to have that. But right now, it only plays through the Amazon Studio speaker, which really isn't Atmos anyway. So what I would say is hold off for now, but once Atmos music that can actually be played back by a full speaker system becomes more ubiquitous, when Amazon Music HD spreads to more devices and is either built into Atmos receivers, or there's a device that can input it as a full Atmos signal, then you will probably benefit from having the 4 overhead speakers. And if you're getting a Denon Marantz, it'll still have Auro in there. You can experiment with it at that time, but I would say hold off for now.
Will the DACs that either Denon or Marantz use make an audible difference versus the DACs in his lower price Onkyo? And I can say unequivocally, without even looking at the specs, no.
That is right.
If the Onkyo or the Denons or Marantz sound better than the Onkyo, the last place I would look would be the DACs.
That is not how you justify this purchase. No. Is by the DACs.
You want to justify the purchase? We can give you some justifications.
Sure.
That ain't going to be it. So he was thinking he would at least add front heights. Having front heights and rear heights would work for all 3 of the immersive audio formats, correct?
Yes.
Yes, they will. They'll work just fine. Will front heights be a worthwhile addition? I don't know. Not if you're just listening to music, in my opinion, but maybe. It also depends on a lot of other things, not just the speakers themselves. Do you have any room treatments? Do you have any of the other stuff that you need? I don't know.
I wouldn't. Again, I'm saying hold off for now. Once we get actual Atmos music, then you're going to want to have the 4 overheads.
And does he need the voice of God speaker, or can 4 heights get the job done? And I think we just talked about this, about how the front heights, rear heights DTS can, or what is it? Which one can make the voice of God? But yeah.
Oh, well, that's the new mono price. the new mono price, when you have 6 overhead speakers, will use the top middles to create the voice of God channel. But that's really only for that one device, and that's a $4,000 pre-pro all external amp. So that's not what he's looking at.
The voice of God speaker, for those of you that don't remember, is essentially a single speaker directly over the main listening position.
That's right.
And for reasons that nobody can understand, only this new mono price will take the voice of God information and matrix it out to the top middles. Everybody else just nope.
That's right. Except for Trinov. Trinov will do it too.
Of course, Trinov.
That's much more. So when you're talking about doing it as an upmixer for music, you really don't need that actual voice of God speaker, because so if it's a actual Auro 3D music recording, where they might have genuinely put something in that Voice of God channel, then it's a maybe. There were, I don't know how many Auro 3D movies you can actually obtain. I know that 1 or 2 actually did come out on Blu-ray, not Ultra HD Blu-ray, but on Blu-ray. But I don't even know where you would obtain those at this point. Since you mostly want to do upmixing of music, you don't need the actual physical Voice of God speaker.
No, 100%. Is Odyssey Multi-EQ XT32 a noticeable improvement over Accu EQ?
Yes.
Well, yeah. It'll actually do something. It'll be nice. It is a noticeable improvement. Will you notice the improvement? Again, I don't know. It depends on your room. Remember, the room correction is not the solution to the problem. The room correction is the icing or the cherry on the top of the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is proper speaker placement, proper speaker calibration as far as levels, trim levels, and stuff like that. Room treatments, sitting in the proper location within your room, and then you run in your room correction. I've already forgotten. This is the guy who's got both of his subs up front, right?
What? No, that was way long ago.
Was that not Paul? This is Paul.
Oh yeah, you're right. No, you're right. I was wrong. Yeah, both subs up front. Yeah,
no,
you're right.
This is Paul, the same guy. So you've already limited yourself, and you said you can't make a change, and I'm not going to try to convince you that you have to. But you've already placed both subs. You've got the proper placement of your subs, as we've discussed many times before, is not in the front of your room. That is not where you want.
But he can't move them, so we can't get into that.
And that's fine. Yeah. So if you're having uneven bass across your seats and you can't place your move your subs to help with this, then there's only so much Odyssey is going to be able to do, or any room correction. It's not just Odyssey. It doesn't make a difference. You got Y-Power or something else, or Trinov or any of that stuff. Nothing is going to be able to make a substantive difference if you're having uneven bass because of your subwoofer placement. You might not be having I don't know. So does Odyssey do more? Definitively, yes. Will you notice it in your room? Definitively, we have no idea.
Yep.
I think that's correct.
Yep.
Okay. Manuel. So 2019 was a rough year for Manuel's theater. He has 2 of the old AV123 MFW15 subs. Aside from all the awful stuff that went down with AV123, and if you guys ever want to be depressed about human nature, please go read up on it and the cult of personality that was, what's his name, who I can't remember his name, and then
Shifter. Mark Shifter.
Oh, how could I forget that?
Yes.
Mark, right? Mark Shifter. Absolutely awful, and people. Once again, I don't understand how there's 2 camps of people online. What seems to be nothing but trolls and what seems to be nothing but people who defend other people no matter what terrible things they do. I mean, it's just awful. So AV123, it couldn't have gone out of business fast enough as far as I was concerned. I have tried some of their products, and every single product I tried was fine, but they made none of them as far as I could tell. All they did was take other people, rebadge them as AV123, and then sell them, and then screw those people out of their money. That's what they did. So anyways, so aside from all the awful stuff that went down with AV123, the MFW15 subs were notorious for failing amplifiers, and sure enough, one of his died with a puff of smoke. Mark Seaton still sells replacement amps, but they cost almost $500. One of the MFW15s is still working. Then his Onkyo TXNR 807 receiver died. It actually had its HDMI board replaced 4 times. It was during those years when Onkyo had known HDMI board issues, and they even greatly extended their warranty coverage, but now it's all over, and his 807 HDMI board is dead again and not coming back this time. His room is 19 by 16 by 8. He's got a motorized 92-inch screen that comes down from this fireplace. Comes down above his fireplace. Well, I thought his fireplace was on the ceiling. That would be weird. His dual subs used to be in diagonally opposite corners, but he's down to 1 sub now and uses Ascend Sierra 2 speakers up front with a Phantom center. Good news. Ascend doesn't look like they're going anywhere, and they're extremely supportive of their products. So, there we go. He's got $800 to spend right now, and he plans to replace things a piece at a time. So what do we think he should do first? Well, you need a new receiver. Clearly.
Yes.
That's. I mean, I want to tell you to get a sub, but you clearly need a new receiver.
Most definitely.
We don't know how many.
Yeah.
Do we know how many speakers he has? We just know what subs he has.
I don't know how many speakers he has total. No.
Yeah. So I guess he doesn't have a center channel either. It looks like
he does not. No, he's running a Phantom. That's for sure.
So should he get a center speaker? The new Ascend Sierra Duo could work. No. You need a receiver.
Not before an AV receiver. AV receiver is going to be number one here. You can live with one subwoofer for the time being. People do it.
Yes.
It's survivable. It's pretty hard to run an audio system without an AV receiver. So, yeah. Without HDMI. I mean, I guess he's inputting optical at the moment. He must be.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So should he sell his MFW15 subs for what he can and get one SVS sub at a time? Should he consider a replacement amp from Seaton? I think you can make a case for it. So basically, his room is, let me look again, 19 by 16 by 8.
Mm-hmm.
You could get away with a 1000 series ported sub in here.
I mean, that's a downgrade from what he's already used to.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you would want to have a 2000 series sub in here, which is what, $800 by itself.
That's right.
So
that's why he's like, he could get one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You still have to get the receiver first. So
yeah.
My gut is I would try to see what I can get for the MFW15 as a group. I would sell them as a package saying, I got one that works and one for parts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the amp's broken, but the replacement is this. I'll sell you both for, $500.
Yeah.
Something like that. You know what I mean? And then sell that if you could, if you can. If you do, then you have money for an receiver and one SVS sub. And I think that's kind of the way I would go. Now, could you make a case for the $500 amp, provided that the amp itself has got the kind of reviews that tell you that it's not going to go bad and they stand behind their products and blah, 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 blah.
I got to tell you, I'd be eager to divest myself of the MFW15s if it were. I mean, not that I would too. When they're performing well, they were good subs, and they continue to be good subs as far as the sheer performance. But I'm like, I'd just be one. I just want them out of my life. That would be me.
I think objectively, though, you could make a case that that getting a replacement amplifier would be a worthwhile thing to do, and for $500, which is less than buying an SVS sub. It
sure is.
And then buy an SVS sub to match it later on down the line. I think you can make the case for that. If it were me in your shoes, I would make the case for getting rid of this thing before it breaks on me. Again.
That's where I come down on this, but yeah.
Regardless, I would. If you did that, I would buy the $500 amp, put it in the sub, and then sell the other one for sure, the one that's still working until before that amp breaks too. Just it'd be buyer beware on that one, but that's up to them to do their research. So he's using an old Pioneer receiver with no HDMI since his Onkyo is dead. Should a new receiver be his top priority? Should he keep 7.2.4 in mind for the future? What's the size?
So I mean, it absolutely should be your top priority.
Yes.
That's what you got to get first. Now, the thing is, with the budget you have in mind, I see virtually no reason for you to not get a Denon X3600H.
Yeah.
It fits your budget. So it gives you the best version of Odyssey. So even if that's the only way you're justifying it for your current speaker setup, and then it gives you the option to go to 7.2.4 in the future if you want to. So I mean, it's like,
what's the price on that accessories for less?
They're right at, I think they're at $800 right now. They might be $900.
Okay.
But I mean, it's within striking distance for sure, and it checks all the boxes you could possibly want. So I'm going to tell you to just go ahead and get a Denon X3600 because then you're not thinking about anything.
Receiver first, get those subwoofers sorted out second, and then center channel. If those are the purchases you're thinking of, that's my order of importance. And I might even consider getting overheads before I got the center channel.
They're 750 refurb 3600Hs over at Accessories for Less.
There you go, 750. That fits your budget.
It sure does.
Jacob Jacob says, back in 2016, Jacob bought a Denon X2200W receiver from Accessories for Less. Everything was working fine until 3 months ago. He's running a 7.2 speaker setup using DefTech BP9040 towers and the matching 9040 center, or CS 9040 center. His surrounds and surround backs are all in-ceiling speakers that came with the house. His issue is that when there's a very loud scene explosion or a sudden crescendo, his center channel information somehow gets diverted to his surround back speakers. The dialogue doesn't go away entirely. It isn't that his center speaker just stops working. He's checked all of the speaker wire connections and his HDMI cables several times, and there were no issues there. It's just a bizarre issue where the dialogue and any of the sounds of the center channel suddenly start playing out of his surround back speakers instead. If he turns his Denon X2200W off and back on, the sound is back to normal with the dialogue coming out of his center speaker again. So can we think of any explanation? Ghosts? Would doing a factory reset help, or is it just time to buy a new receiver?
This is the first time I've ever heard of this exact issue.
Yeah. 11 years of doing this podcast almost, and this is the first time I've ever heard of this. My first thought is, are you sure? Are you
yeah,
sure?
The center speaker cutting out. The center speaker cutting out. I'm gonna. Again, even though he's checked all his wires, if that were just cutting out, I'd be like, you've got one stray strand of copper. You've got a tiny little, you've got a spider web connected.
But that should send your receiver into protection mode. That should shut the receiver down completely.
Right.
My first thought when somebody says something like this is a bounce, is a wall bounce. Some sort of slap echo, and you're only noticing it because it gets super loud and then it bounces back from the back wall and hits you.
His center literally isn't making the dialogue anymore, and it's coming out of a different speaker.
I understand that. That's what, but you can. Okay, so this is why I said, "Are you sure?" Because if your brain starts to perceive this wall bounce as having the priority over this, what's happening in the coming directly at your face, if that is the case, then it will perceive it as coming from the behind you and those two speakers behind you, rather than coming from the place it's coming from. Now, that's why I said, are you sure? When you do this, do you go to your back speakers and it's definitely the speakers themselves, or are you just sitting in your seat and all of a sudden you notice that these things start coming from behind you all of a sudden? I'm willing to admit or agree or whatever that the center is cutting out and for some reason stuffs are coming out of the back. And the answer is, douse it in holy water and get another receiver, because I cannot even imagine what could be going on electronically to make this happen.
I mean, it would have to be technically a decoder error, but I've never heard of a decoder error exactly like that. So that's new to me.
But even if it was, I mean, he should be able to. To test that, he could switch decoders. Right. I mean, he could.
Well, it might be the chip itself, I guess, but
I know, but the DTS versus, so find something that's 2-channel, use DTS, upmixing to do it, and turn it real loud and see if it happens, and then use Dolby to do it, and then see if there's some difference there. But I can't imagine what else it would be.
I mean, he's definitely outside of warranty period by this time if it's a 2200W. So he's outside of warranty. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that it is not worth it to contact Denon to see if there is any sort of repair. But to do a repair on something like this, it would have to be repeatable. So you'd have to make sure that you really can say, here is exactly what repair shop needs to do to repeat this error so that they can start potentially to track down and fix this thing, because they're not going to just take your word for it. It needs to be a repeatable issue. So if it is in any way random where you can't tell them, here are the exact things that you need to do to make this problem happen in your shop, then it's kind of time for a new receiver, because I mean, it might cost you just as much to get this thing repaired as to get a new receiver anyway. And this is not an error I can
with
explain.
Accessory for Less sitting around here undercutting everybody's prices. Yes, it's very hard to justify fixing things anymore. Yeah.
Well, because I mean, he can get a modern 2600H for $300. I'm like, I bet you the repair ends up costing $250 anyway if they did it. So
at least. It's so weird. If you do figure out what's going on, please let us know.
Yeah, that's a new one.
And even if it's a slap echo, like I said, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it was just a slap echo. I'm so embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed, dude. We do stupid stuff in here all the time. I'm constantly messing stuff up. Have you heard me on this podcast? Anyways, I sucked a tweeter once. Chris says his room is 11 by 17 by 8, which is just a tiny bit smaller than my room. So, room buddies. At the moment, he's using a single SVS PB12 NSD. I have the PC12 NSDs and 2 of them. Subwoofer, but he'd love to have dual subs. His issue is that he doesn't have enough space for a second sub that's as big as his PB12. He's considering the PC2000 Pro cylinder, but even though it has a smaller footprint, he really doesn't want something that physically large. So which sub can he buy that will work well in his setup while taking up the least amount of physical space? You can get the sealed box.
Yeah, 11 by 17 by 8. You'll be fine with the sealed SB2000 Pro, which is, you know, barely over 14 inches wide, 15 and a half inches deep, 14 and a half inches tall. That's the smallest one that will definitely have the output and extension that you want. Yeah, you're pairing it up with a PB12 NSD. It's fine. In this room size, it's fine. In this room.
Yeah. Let me tell you one thing. I definitely, in my room, could have gone with the sealed 12 NSDs in here. But my whole adult and semi-adult home theater life, I have been enamored with cylinder subs. And there was no chance I was not going to get a cylinder sub when I got the chance. I've always wanted them, and I got them. Did I need them in this room? If you listen to those podcasts back in the day when I got these things, I said they're way overboard for this room, but I don't care. They're cylinders, and I'm doing my little happy dance.
Oh yes,
they are. Yeah.
I mean, I'll let you know, like Monolith, Monoprice, they do have a sealed version of their 12, is the M12S for sealed, but it's bigger than the 2000 Pro. It's 15 and a half inches wide, 16 and a half inches deep, and 19 and a half inches tall. So it's that's like a PC, that's like an AP500 almost. Pretty close, yeah. So
for Maxium,
I'm like, go get a sealed 2000 Pro. I think you'll be very happy.
Ilango is looking to install 8 pairs of in-ceiling speakers around his house for casual background music. He wants to have back cans for all of them, so he's leaning towards RBH. And RBH in-ceiling speaker lineup, there are the VA615, VF615, and VM615, with prices going up and the driver material is changing. He's got prices from his local dealer, and either the VA or VF would be affordable to him. But is there a compelling reason to spend more on the VF series? It claims slightly deeper extension in its frequency response, -3 at 50 hertz versus 55 hertz. For the VA is the one with the 55 hertz. Slightly higher power handling, 100 watts versus 80 watts, and it uses a fiberglass cone with aluminum dome tweeter versus a graphite woofer with a silk dome tweeter. Any thoughts? My thoughts are go the cheaper one.
Yeah, when you're talking whole house audio, casual background music, absolutely go with the VA. They're less expensive. They're still really good. The VF was like, you remember the old, what was it, the T series or TK series that had the yellow drivers?
TK. Yeah.
The TK series. And it's like,
I had those speakers.
The VF are like the last vestiges of that series, because the TK series went away a long time ago in RVH's regular lineup, but I guess they still have some of those yellow fiberglass woofers hanging around. So like, here's a VF in ceiling that uses that woofer. So there's like nothing that really matches them in RBH's lineup anymore. For these purposes, save the money, get the VA.
Yeah, whole house audio is you don't really need super duper high, efficient, high-end speakers. You're not looking for that quality of sound. What you're looking for is good coverage and a flat frequency response and a little bit of bass. Yeah, you really don't need a ton, because you don't want people to have to fight over the bass to talk to each other.
You also don't want to physically vibrate all your floors that way, man.
Yeah. So RBH offers 2 back cans for the 6.5 driver models: the BC6R, which is nearly 8 inches deep, and the BC6RS, which is only 3.5 inches deep. In some parts of his house, the shorter 6RSs will fit, while the regular 6R won't. So how will that impact the performance of the speakers, and does having back cans of any kind affect the sound versus leaving the backs open? Well, depending on where you're putting them, you might not have the option of not having back cans.
Yeah, anything going into an attic space by code must have the back can. That's for fire safety purposes.
So you've got more internal volume here, and this is are these front ported, or are they not ported at all, speakers?
I don't believe they are ported at all. Yeah, if we take a look at their design, that's not a front ported design of this drivers themselves.
So, I mean, what would the difference be? Well, RBH will tell you. They're kind of open about those things, what they think it'll do. But it should affect slightly the bass response, is what I would guess in this. And honestly, again, whole house audio, you get the one. Actually, I'd get the cheaper one in every case I could. If the 3.5 is, even though you could fit the 6.5-inch one or whatever the other one, 8-inch one or whatever the one. If the 3.5-inch one is the cheaper one, I'd buy all of those and just go with that.
Yeah, it would be strictly in the bass response. That's the only place that you might hear any difference, and even that is questionable whether you would actually hear the difference. But that is the only part that would be affected in any way. I mean, I'm always in favor of having back enclosures. I don't really understand why almost no in-wall speakers come with back enclosures. I think it's ridiculous that they don't. So I'm always in favor of having it. It prevents sound from leaking in other rooms.
I'm pretty sure they don't come with back enclosures because the people who normally sell them are custom installers, and they want to upsell you. Either them constructing an enclosure for it or selling you an enclosure that goes
as
with
Lee
it.
is so fond of saying, I mean, in-wall, in-ceiling speakers began as car audio speakers. That is where they began. Now they have brackets on them and binding posts and stuff like that. But effectively, they're still very similar to car audio speakers. And they don't have backs, so I guess that's why.
Mark says he's been listening to AVRant for 10 years and dreaming about building a dedicated home theater for 15. He has finally bought a house, and now he's excited to get started. It's a split-level house. The living room is above the basement, in which he plans to build his theater. Then beside that living room and basement, there's a step down to the family room with the bedrooms above. So it sort of overlaps a little bit. So the living room... the living room is above the basement, and then there's like some steps down to the family room, so it kind of overlaps both the basement and the living room. And above the family room is the bedrooms, and apparently there's no kitchen in this house. So he's going to build his theater in the basement, which is unfinished. He'll be putting the theater as far away from the family room and bedrooms as possible. So 2 of the theater walls will be exterior walls, and then the 2 party walls will still have part of the unfinished basement on the other side. He figures once he has finished the theater with full framing, it'll roughly be 11 by 17 by 7, and there is already a door to close off the basement stairs. His goal is to be able to play the theater at close reference volume without waking anyone in the bedrooms. Dude, that really depends on how well. If you're not going to fully soundproof, it depends on how lightly they sleep.
Well, he's been
researching at Trademark Soundproofing and Soundproofing Company on the best ways to build and finish this theater room. A, is it necessary to build on top of his concrete foundation in any way, or could the standard basement carpet directly over the concrete be okay? Not if you don't want to wake people up. And you're playing at full reference volume, and you start shaking that foundation, it's going to shake every wall in your house.
Yeah, and also I hate carpet directly over concrete. That is a horrible idea. Always if you're finishing your basement, always finish the floor is my advice there. Now, it sounds like his basement is unfinished, and he is constructing these party walls. I mean, these are non-load bearing, so you don't have to worry about that part of it. So do the full dimpled plastic over the part of the concrete that you're going to finish. The full dimpled plastic that automatically gives you little air gap and some decoupling. You're going to have a subfloor directly. It could be OSB, it could be plywood. Tongue and groove. That'll be directly tap-conned through the dimpled plastic into your concrete floor. That now is your subfloor, and you actually build your party walls on top of that. The party walls do not connect directly to the concrete. They build on top of your tongue and groove subfloor with the dimpled plastic underneath. You do that. Now, if you want to now prevent sound even further, the dimpled plastic already does a substantial amount. So you're pretty much good there. You've essentially decoupled your subfloor from the foundation floor, and you're basically done there. But if you put down a nice padding layer, whether that's a full rubberized padding or just a nice thick carpet padding and carpet there, you're good on the floor as far as I'm concerned.
So Trademark Soundproofing has a suggestion to cut pieces of drywall to fit in between the existing ceiling joists and then to attach them to the underside of the living room subfloor using green glue. Is that beneficial? This is the only website where he's ever come across that recommendation, and even they say it's optional. I mean, I thought we would just do like hat channels and resilient.
Yeah, no, this is It's a weird recommendation. I mean, if you're talking about footfall noise, that's coming through the joists anyway.
Yeah.
Adding drywall to the underside of the upstairs subfloor isn't going to really do anything about footfall noise. As far as preventing sound from getting upstairs, if you stop it inside the theater, that's where you want to stop it. This is like, the sound got all the way up into the joist bays and we're going to put some more mass up there. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I wouldn't go with that. Soundproofing company doesn't recommend doing it. I'm like, they're the authorities. I go with their recommendations.
So does the type of insulation put in the ceiling joists and in the party walls matter? It's as much as you can.
Well, no, you don't want to actually compress it. You wouldn't
want to compress it, but I mean, you want to fill those joists. Yeah. Like, you want to fill everything with insulation.
But I mean, whether it's the pink stuff, whether it's Roxol, whether it's some other thing, the shredded up blue jeans or the cellulose, it doesn't matter. Acoustically, they all perform the same. The only different one is closed cell, like hard, rigid foam. The
stuff that you spray in there and then it gets hard.
And it gets actually hard. You wouldn't want to use that, but that's actually, I think, the most expensive one, and I think he's looking to try and save money. So if you're like, Roxol's more expensive than the pink stuff, just use the pink stuff. Pink stuff is fine.
Pink stuff, yeah, just use pink stuff. If he goes by soundproofing company's recommendations, he'd be installing sound clips on all the joists and framing for the walls, and installing hat channels in all of those sound clips, and then hanging 2 layers of drywall with green glue in between. All that all seams.
Oh, that's the wrong type of seams.
Sealed. Yeah, I can see that. All seams would be sealed with acoustic caulk. Are any of those steps truly necessary for all of the walls? Well, like I said, how heavy do people sleep? If people don't sleep, if you really don't want anything to get out of this room, I mean, first of all, nothing to get out of the room is more expensive than any of us are willing to pay. It is, you need a room within a room, and it's you need an air hatch and a bunch of other stuff.
Essentially is doing room within a room, though. If you consider the original room to be the foundation of his basement, and the upstairs, the joists and the subfloor upstairs, if that's your first room, he is basically constructing a room within a room, all new framing. So as long as you are putting framing in front of the exterior walls, you're not like just using strapping to the exterior walls. If you're actually constructing framing on the exterior walls, those walls do not need sound clips and hat channels to attach the drywall. The framing itself, which you have built on top of your new subfloor with the dimple plastic under it, so that's already decoupled, and then you're building the framing there, which is not physically attached to the foundation wall, you don't need to further decouple. You've already decoupled your exterior walls. But then you would need to decouple.
Walls, you would need to decouple the ceiling from those joists and build those walls to that ceiling.
That's right.
And then you're good. And then you basically, Rob said, you basically have a room within a room.
That's right.
As much as possible, And then your big escape of air of sound will be through your door, and through any outlets that you have that aren't sealed.
Even your interior walls, because he's constructing these new party walls, and they are not load-bearing walls, and they're being built on top of his new basement subfloor. There, it isn't really necessary to decouple the drywall from that new framing, because yet again, it's already decoupled from anything that is load-bearing. So what I wouldn't do is leave the backside that is open to the rest of the unfinished basement. I wouldn't leave that backside open. I would fill the bays of your new party walls that you're framing, fill that with insulation, and put at least 1 layer of drywall on the other side, the outside of the theater. Don't just leave that wide open and unfinished. But it isn't, in fact, the only place where he really needs to use either sound clips and hat channels or just regular resilient channel is his ceiling. His ceiling joist, that is framing of the actual structure of your building. That is load-bearing stuff. There you need to decouple the drywall from that. But it doesn't even have to be sound clips and hat channels. Regular resilient channel. The reason Soundproofing Company doesn't like resilient channel is because they're mostly talking to contractors, and contractors almost never install resilient channel correctly because it takes some care and effort, whereas the hat channels are pretty hard to mess up. But if he's doing this himself, resilient channels can work very much just as well. So decouple that, but the rest you've already decoupled just with your framing. So we've simplified his construction greatly. Now, with that simplification, you must focus on how is air getting in and out of this room, because that is your biggest flanking path by far. Yeah. As Tom mentioned, all of your outlets, if you're going to have any type of light, like try to avoid recessed lighting if you can, have things surface mounted where you can. He already said he's not going to do in-wall and in-ceiling speakers specifically so that he doesn't have big holes. So all of those things, everywhere that air could theoretically leak out whatsoever, that all has to be sealed. And the big one is, how do you get air in and out of this room? Look at soundproofing company's dead vent system. We know he has a whole unfinished basement outside of this theater. You must be able to set up an air exchange somehow, I would think, so that you don't actually have forced air with a whole duct system going into this theater room. You cool an area outside the theater or heat an area outside the theater and then use an air exchange through a dead vent. That prevents the sound from getting to the rest of your house. That might be where you end up spending most of your money and time and effort.
All right, Noah. Noah came across an article in Sound and Vision that says the Harman subwoofer advice that we so often recommend, specifically using 4 subwoofers with one in each corner or at the midpoints of all 4 walls in a rectangular room, doesn't actually work very well in the real world. Gee, I wonder why they're saying that. They say the reason is because the 4 subwoofer model is based on the principle of varying the arrival times of the sound waves at the listening position so you don't get standing waves. But this results in short transient sounds like a gunshot or kick drum sounding odd as you receive multiple wave fronts coming in from slightly different times. Oh, yeah, because you're hearing the direct sound from the subwoofers and not the reflected sound of the room.
Yes, this basic premise of why it wouldn't work is already faulty. Yeah,
it's already wrong. But this is Sound and Vision, and what they do more than anything is make sure they continue to sell their magazine and/or website. And the people who are reading them think that anything that is not $1,000 a foot speaker cable cannot possibly.
I mean, they're not as bad as Stereophile, not yet. There's still a lot in Sound and Vision that I like, but so far the basic underlying axiom of their entire argument is already false. So they're not starting out well.
So they could suggest a controlled acoustic bass system or double bass array instead. The idea of which is to measure the bass coming from the 4 subwoofers at the front of the room, but take that measurement at the back wall. They then install asymmetrical subwoofers on the back wall.
No, symmetrical.
No. So
exactly matching what's at the front. Whatever you got at the front of your room, you exactly match it at the back of the room. Yep.
Measure the bass coming from the subwoofers at the front of the room, but take that measurement at the back wall, then install symmetrical subwoofers on the back wall and have them in perfect opposite polarity at output level at the back wall to completely cancel the waves that originated at the front. They say to do this instead of the more random sound wave cancellations that take place by just having 4 subwoofers all playing in mono. What do we think? We think they're wrong because they are. I mean, it's not just us that thinks they're wrong. Like, quite literally, science
thinks
they're wrong.
The idea that you could cancel a sound, like what they're literally talking about is you set up these subwoofers at the back of the room so that the sound wave that comes from the front of the room is obliterated, never bounces off the back wall. It's obliterated by these subs, active cancellation. I'm like, that's not how waves work.
Well, let's just say it actually worked. It would be canceling at both sides. You would have no bass. There would be
it's like
no bass in this room because those waves are coming out. They'd be let's just say in theory, right? If you're like, okay, here's the wave as it hits this back wall, right? So the wave comes out and it's coming, up, and then because those waves are like 30 feet long or something like that, you put it in exact opposition, it's going to obliterate the wave as it comes through.
It doesn't this idea that you can obliterate the wave is flat out false. Yes. Waves pass through each other. They pass through each other. So in that one location where you have the waves perfectly out of phase with each other, in that one location, if you were observing there, you would hear nothing. At that location, you're hearing 2 waves that are perfectly in opposite polarity, and you experience nothing. But that doesn't obliterate the wave on either side of that location. Right. The waves are still there. They pass through each other like absolutely nothing happened. It's only where they intersect that you can have some sort of interaction. So this notion of obliterating the waves at the back wall, no, the wave that came from the front is still going to bounce off the back wall and come back the other direction and bounce off the front wall and go back and forth. That is still going to happen. Where you care about the standing wave existing is at your seat, not at the back wall. I don't care what happens at unless that's where my seat is, but I don't really care what happens at my back wall. I care about
you got bigger problems if your seat is back there.
At my seat. So the fundamental understanding of what is going on with long bass sound waves, and believe me, this is nothing new. The fundamental understanding of bass sound waves in small rooms is like really poor. That's why Harman's research is so valuable and still, even though we've been talking about it for years, still novel to people who basically still don't understand what's going on. But yeah, you can't obliterate the bass wave. That isn't what happens. They pass through each other. And the notion that you're going to get these different wave fronts from the bass hitting you and you're going to be like, oh, that gunshot came from like 8 different directions. No, you never heard the original wavefront to begin with. You never heard it. It was too long for you to ever experience that wavefront. So they are just fundamentally wrong on all of this.
Yeah, it's a kind of a weird thing. I mean, even if waves work the way they said,
right,
which they don't,
right,
then what you would end up with is, I think what they're trying to say is you get the wave to go across the room and then use the other subwoofer to stop it from bouncing.
Well, they're thinking in the same terms of you have a speaker playing treble at the front of your room and you put a huge amount of absorption at the back of your room so that you basically don't hear any back wall reflection. They're like, well, you can't do that with just, with subwoofers, but what we can do is put other subwoofers back there to act as active cancellation to
like noise canceling headphones, basically.
Yeah.
But that's not, but if you've ever listened to noise canceling headphones, one thing, they're good at canceling out or to making you not hear those uniform sounds that are like humming,
constant sound,
the droning, like an airplane thing. But what you also notice too is that, first of all, the headphones are awfully close to your head, and there's a lot of pressure on your ears. A lot of people, you'll notice that pressure on your ears, because what's happening is there's still sound bouncing around in there, but what they're doing is they're playing that one sound in opposition to make it so that you're not hearing that droning noise as much.
That's right.
Or at all, so that you can hear the other sounds that are bouncing around the room as well. But it doesn't mean that sound's gone. It's still in there. That's why you still feel the pressure on your ears. In fact, you feel more pressure than you normally would have felt.
There's more sound pressure. It's just that at your ear, that particular frequency is in opposite polarity to itself.
Which is exactly. So if this thing worked the way that they if you did it at the back wall, the bass would be gone.
Yeah, in that one location. Yeah.
In that one location. But everywhere else, who knows what it would be. So, in Dan's search for ambient light rejecting screen options, including DIY screen paint, he came across Crystal Edge ALR screen paint, and there are many videos on YouTube that appear to show incredible results. Some of the claims seem too good to be true, though. Really? So do we have any thoughts one way or the other before Dan spends his money to give them a try? I always hate ambient light rejecting anything, but I don't know.
But this especially, and unfortunately, I'm probably going to have a whole new group of haters. In addition to Chain Audio, now I'm going to have the Crystal Edge people coming after me. But
that's all right.
They are a flat out scam. In fact, just go ahead, go to Google, type in Crystal Edge screen scam. Well, first of all, you'll have a huge thread on AVS forum because, the guy who runs Crystal Edge, he has been banned for life from AVS twice because he came back under a pseudonym and got banned again. So
I'm Googling it right now.
Yep, there you go. So the guy got banned from AVS forum twice for life. There's one little hint for you, but also the number, so people who have ordered that never received stuff, just flat, straight up just ripped off, right? Money sent via PayPal, received nothing in return type of stuff. Or what they did receive was literally a gallon of paint from a store. And he's like, here you go. Here's your paint. It's literally nothing that you couldn't have just bought off a shelf. No, they're a straight up scam. Yeah. And none of their videos, if you scrutinize them whatsoever, like what he's showing is never actually what he, like there's always an edit in there. He did one where he's like, I'm going to show you that this is real. So he paints the screen on, like he paints a screen on camera and then supposedly carries it over and puts a projector on it like before it's even dried to show you the results of how great it is. Except that there's this moment where the screen he supposedly just painted went off screen and something new came in its place. Like it's straight up fraud, man. So I know I'm probably going to get a whole bunch of haters or get sued over this or something like that. But no, Google has my back and all the other people and AVS4. I'm banning him twice for life. Don't do it, Dan. Stay very, very far away.
Okay.
It is. Oh, yeah. We've gone time, man. And we put a good dent in there. So we have left on list Daryl A, Michael R, Jeff, Monty N, Infinite Gary, of course, Ryan, and Ted.
We want to thank our listeners of the week, Jacob, for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and giving us a PayPal donation. Thank you, Jacob. And thank you to our 106 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yes, Jacob, thank you very much for the donation. Patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. If anyone would like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation, thanks so much to our 106 patrons over there.
And thank you to SVS for being our listener of the week by mentioning us in their recent newsletter, and Infinite Gary, Nathan, Andy, Carl, and all the others who pointed it out to us. Also want to thank Infinite Gary for talking us up to Soul, and Lee Overstreet for talking us up to Accessories for Less. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, Lee, Gary, Nathan, Andy, Carl, thank you all very much for the support. Thanks, SVS, for that prominent shout-out in their newsletter. That was nice to see.
And for AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.